Hey everybody, it's Rob from VRA Realty Alliance. Today I'm talking with Tyrone Taylor from Anchor Property Solutions on the top 5 mistakes people make in property management. If you feel you're getting good value from this content, I would really appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe to my channel. It really means a lot to me. Let's get into it. Hey Tyrone, how's it going, man?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing, Rob?
I'm good, keeping busy, that's for sure. You do property management, right?
I do. My company's Anchor Property Solutions. My partner and I, we wholesale properties. We buy investments for ourselves. We do rehabs and renovations, and we also do property management. You think about, kind of what happens, in the evolution of a turnkey property, from buying it all the way through management.
How many units are you managing right now?
Right now, we have a little over 250 units under management.
Well, you definitely know what you're talking about. So, hey man, I invited you on because I wanted to ask you the 5 top mistakes that people make with property management, whether it's a landlord or a professional property management. So what do you got for me?
Oh man, this was a tough one. This is a tough one. It's tough because it's hard to boil it down to 5, man. I on a daily basis, man, it's I see everything. I'd probably go on for a while, but if I had to pick 5, just 5, I would say number 1 would be making a mistake from the beginning of not buying the property based on cash flow.
Why do you think that's such a big problem for people if they mess up the cash flow?
It really comes down to starting off on the wrong foot, right? The way that we look at our personal investments, we think that you can never really be too conservative when trying to project your numbers and project your vacancy, the maintenance, and all those expenses that you're going to get hit with eventually. What we see more often than not is folks really get excited about the investment property, where again there's that buying based on emotion, and they buy for reasons other than the cash flow. One way we see that happen is people buying based on appreciation. They'll say, well, cash flow isn't really there, but I'll have a tenant and the tenant will be paying the mortgage down, and I'll get my taxes and my expenses and insurance and all that paid. And 5-10 years from now, the property could be worth 50, 75K more. So it'll be a worthwhile investment over time. It never works out that way, at least in my experience so far. I love doing this. It always, taking that really hopeful view in the beginning always seems to come back and bite folks. And then when that happens, they typically turn to property managers like us to come and clean it up. Exactly.
Yeah, it's so important. I help connect investors all over the country with realtors that know what they're doing and understand investing. I feel like a lot of times people just are going down this path and maybe they're not working with the right people that are showing them the right way to do things, and cash flow is so important. So on a cash flow, what would you say? All right, so we're in the suburbs of Philadelphia, right? What would you say is a good cash flow per unit that you would want to see?
For me personally, and what we advise, I like to see at least $300 plus, per unit after all expenses are paid. That's everything.
Excellent, man. Let's talk about number 2.
Buying a property without doing proper or adequate due diligence to see what they're really getting themselves into.
What do you mean by that?
I'll start this one out with a story. I recently picked up a portfolio for management. Owner bought 18 units. We had already been doing some management for this client. We had 8 units prior to the new portfolio they picked up. So we'd already been working with them for close to a year. We had a good relationship going and all of that. And they said they were in the process of, buying these 18 units. And when we talked to them about the portfolio, we wanted to try to make sure that they were doing some of these things, or, taking precautions to make sure that they were taken care of. They were working with an agent that we didn't know, had never worked with before. And, we just were asking them questions, and all the answers we got back were, oh yeah, everything's great. All the tenants paid rent on time. None of the places have, deferred maintenance issues. They've all been rehabbed within the past 2 years. So it was like soup to nuts, everything we threw at them, they had an answer for it. And we were like, wow, this is awesome. Like, this is, if it sounds like you guys found a great deal. Like, if you can pick up this portfolio, you get 18 units, it's got decent cash flow, and the properties were well taken care of. The owner was thinking way in advance. This looks solid. Fast forward about 6 months, and it didn't take 6 months. 6 months is when it started to get really dicey. I'd say about 3 months in, we started to see some chinks in the story that they had been told by the previous agent and by the owner, mostly by the owner. Things like just maintenance issues that we found out after sending our people there time after time to investigate, that they had just basically covered things up. The kind of, water leak, replace a big piece of drywall, or, and clean it all up, make it look good. That roof problem never existed. Stuff like that, mold issues, paint over it with some Kills primer, pretty much blocks almost anything. Good as new. That doesn't exist. Like I said, 6 months in, when things started to get really dicey, we were at probably close to 10K in maintenance by the 9th or 10th month. And like I said, this is recent, so this was like 2 months ago. It's still an ongoing saga.
Wow. All right. So number 3 you mentioned was underestimating maintenance costs. So
Yep.
what do you see with that?
Doing things based on emotion, right? And not doing proper analysis, not properly building in all of the numbers that they need to for making sure that their bases are covered. We see the same thing in maintenance, thinking that things won't go wrong. In that perfect world that we all live in somewhere.
Right. I've never had anything go wrong in my life. So
yeah. Till 2020 hit, but
yeah, this whole year.
But and that, we see that with everything maintenance related, with the smallest things to the larger things. We advise our clients to always just count on things going wrong. And based on what the rents are, based on what kind of property it is, whether it's a single family, multi-unit, based on the age of the property, how long it's been since the property's been overhauled or, renovated. We typically do an assessment with our management clients, and we would make recommendations for how much we think they should be putting in reserve, just to save for maintenance. For instance, that roof, it's old, it's you said you've had some leaks here and there. We saw a couple water spots. We understand that was old, but sooner or later that roof's going to need to be replaced. You might want to put some money aside for that. Your HVAC unit, the big items like that, but also things down to toilets clogging and a garbage disposal going out. Just the simple stuff. When these things come up, we see people scrambling for basically pulling money from other areas of their life, or and things getting tight to manage the maintenance on the property, when true cash flow on property should be paying for itself if you did all your due diligence and the property's rented.
Right. So, I mean, obviously an older property, and like, when you're buying something, you should know the age of the roof, the hot water heater, the HVAC system, all that stuff. And then, obviously you've got whether you're buying like a condo in an HOA and what are you responsible for, or if you're buying a single family house, understanding that. But I mean, I don't know, in general, when you are looking at a property, let's say it's a condo that you're going to be renting out, what would you say, like $100 a month or something like that to put aside, or more than that?
Yeah, so we do it 2 ways. I always recommend just a set reserve that we keep off to the side. Like, you don't touch that money. And typically we do between $250 to $500. On a condo, we might make it like $250 to $300. But, depending on the size of the property, square foot, the amount of bathrooms and so forth. But ideally, we'd have them put aside $500 that we hold in a reserve account. And then on top of that, for extra, precaution, we recommend that they also save, money to deal with those capital expenses that come up as well. So $100 is, would be a nice round number for a condo. For larger properties, if they can afford it based on the rent and the expenses and it's cash flowing, then we might even recommend a little more if it's an older property and it's large.
It's an interesting idea of having the, starting off when you're buying the property, that you just set up a cash reserve account for maintenance, and then you've got something to pull from if you've got any issues. That makes a lot of sense.
Number 4 is not properly screening tenants. That's always a fun one.
Okay, yeah. I guess you've got have some stories around that, right?
Oh man, yeah. We started internally. We started a little series that we call War Story Wednesdays, and so we've seen the good and the bad and the ugly with tenants, and obviously it's just a part of the game. You never truly know what you're getting until they're moved in and everything's going, and still once that honeymoon period is over, it's typically about 3 months we see is when the true colors start to show, and it comes out in different ways. So from the aspect of rent collection, we see tenants who obviously could not really afford the place, but they may have bolstered their income, or gotten a cosigner or a parent or someone to agree to get on the lease with them. The cosigner or whoever that was really had no intention of having any liability for the property. They just needed their income and their credit to get approved. So you have that side of it. Then you have the tenants who, no criminal background history or anything like that. And then, you realize they're like throwing massive parties in the place and disrupting neighbors. You're getting calls from everybody on the block about trash being littered out in front of the property. And it's the only property on the block that looks like that. And the property manager better get down here ASAP and do something about this. So, like I said, it's a mix, everyone's a mixed bag. You can't really, you can't obviously predict what you're going to see all the time, but we found that there are measures that you can put in place up front to really minimize the chances of that happening.
I'm sorry. What are those measures that you put in place?
So a couple of things, outside of the typical stuff, which, for every tenant, we do full credit checks, we do background checks, we do eviction checks with the courthouses, we do the income verification. So we'll, our people call for places of employment, stuff like that, verify they actually do still work there and those kind of things instead of just relying on pay stubs. Quick note, we have seen folks who have been laid off from jobs, like as of within the past couple of weeks, show pay stubs for places they were no longer employed at.
Sure.
So that's a good note. I would say always call. But in addition to that, we have in some instances even gone as far as actually visited the folks at their current residence just to get, like a referral or reference point of like how they actually live.
Yeah. That's a really, I love that idea. One thing somebody told me once was look in their car. Look what their car looks like. Is it full of crap?
Yeah.
Is it less like dirty and not, it's like a hoarder car. It's got dents all over it, right?
Yeah.
I love the idea of just visiting where they live now, just saying, hey, would you mind if I come by your house now? Do you set that up as a meeting? Do you knock up unannounced? I mean, I guess you don't want them to clean the house before you get there, right?
No, we don't. So there's two things. One, we found that it works. We found that the people who would pass the test or who would not be, they basically, you stopping by their place, you wouldn't be surprised by what you see. They're more inviting and they understand why you're asking that. The people that we've seen who were really, really just shocked that we would even entertain such a thing, they were the ones who really, there was a reason why they didn't want us to be there. So, I will also say we really only do it in cases where something just doesn't feel right, right? Everything checks out, credit's good, income's good, all the rest of that stuff. And then, they might ask if they could have a pet or something like that. They might have, some kind of something on their history, their criminal history that might not be a problem, but like a previous let's say it was a problem, but not like a current thing. So say like a disorderly conduct or something like that from years ago. People make mistakes, have issues, whatever.
Sure.
But if there's any reservation on our end, we like to take that extra measure. And we actually started out doing it for folks who were requesting pets. And it started working out well for that. And then we said, hey, if there's a case where it really comes down to the wire, we really need to get a place rented and there's, no other tenants that currently are applying, let's try to lock it in that way. So it's worked well for us.
That's a good gem, man. I really had never heard anyone say that before. So very cool. What's number 5?
Number 5 is outsourcing to property managers without understanding property management. That's a good one.
So when you say people don't understand property management, do you feel that they end up getting maybe ripped off by a property manager that's taking advantage of them, or that they aren't able to effectively communicate with the property manager or don't have realistic expectations of the property manager?
Yep, I'd say the latter two. There's a difference between just hiring someone to do something that you don't want to do or you don't, understand, right? And from my perspective, I would consider outsourcing you having actually developed an understanding of something or have done it yourself, and then you decide, okay, I'm building systems in place, and as a part of my systems to become more efficient, I'm going to hire someone else to do these things. What we see is that a lot of investors actually skip that learning part and they go right to, I bought a property, it's a good deal, there's a tenant in there, give it to a property manager. Have unrealistic expectations as to what's supposed to happen, which causes problems with the property manager. Everything becomes the property manager's fault. And I'm not speaking, from like a victim or anything like that. There's enough bad property managers to go around, believe me.
Sure.
So a lot of the blame can be, placed in the right direction if people are having issues with property managers. But what we also do see is that people generally expect that things will go perfectly when they've never managed their own rentals. And then when they don't go well, they think it's because the property manager isn't doing their job.
It's like, have you ever lived real life?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you hired a property manager, because you knew stuff was going to go wrong and you need somebody to handle it, right?
Exactly.
If you didn't think anything was going to go wrong, why hire a property manager in the first place? Why pay that money?
There you go. There's no magic 8-ball that tells me your tenant that we leased your property to, that passed all the checks and had a 750 credit score, was going to lose their job and stop paying rent 6 months in. I mean, that's life.
Well, Tyrone, thank you so much for taking us through those 5 top mistakes. I know you probably have about 30 more you could tell me, but we'll save those for another day. If people want to get in touch with you, hire you to do property management, I see you do the whole gamut with investors, taking them turnkey. How can they reach out to you?
On IG, we're at Anchor Property Solutions. Facebook, we're Anchor Prop Solutions. You can also, email me. I don't know if you want, I can drop my email to you if you want to.
Yeah, I'll put that in the description down below for people.
Yep. Yeah, but we look at property management, as a partnership. And my sort of take on it is I like to look after everyone's properties as if they were my own, because I know what that looks like and it makes it more real for us. And I kind of guide our team along that path to make sure, like, hey, this is not just a job. If this doesn't go well, we have the ability to greatly impact someone's life in a negative way. So let's make sure we care for their assets and we take care of people. And if anybody ever needs any advice or anything, advice is always free. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I love hanging out with you and your wife, and it's been really great getting to know you guys. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you all next time.
All right.